Hello, good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you in the name of UNCLES. My name is Doreen Montag. I'm a senior research affiliate of UNCLES, and it's my pleasure today to welcome Dr. Elena Azaola from CSS Mexico, who is here at the ANU at the moment as a visiting fellow in the School of Anthropology and Archaeology at UNCLES. And it's my great pleasure to say a little bit more about Elena and to welcome you to this, I think, very important evening and discussion and demonstration of a documentary, which I think reflects a very important reality, not only of Latin America, but also of other parts of the world. But let me first say a few words about Dr. Azaola, who is a senior investigator at the Center of Advanced Studies and Research in Social Anthropology, which is located in Mexico City. She has been trained in Mexico as an anthropologist as well as a psychoanalyst. She was an advisor at the National Commission of Human Rights and is a current council member at the Federal District Commission of Human Rights. Dr. Azaola has received numerous awards and grants for the diverse research projects that she has conducted on youth and women's delinquency issues and on the Mexican penitentiary system. Dr. Azaola also coordinated the European Commission project for street children in Mexico. And tonight, she will take us to talk a little about the situation of Mexican street children and the sexual exploitation of street children. Dr. Azaola is going to talk for about 20 minutes, and then we will see part of a documentary. We won't show everything, but we will show about 30 minutes, and then we will open up for discussion on the topic. And with, of course, as always, after our UNCLES events, we will have some wine and some food outside. I would also like to mention that Dr. Azaola is going to give a presentation next Tuesday on the 30th of September from 1 to 2 p.m. in the Gender Institute, and there she will be talking about her current research on violence from the gender perspective and in the penitentiary system in Mexico. So I would like to welcome you all for that event as well. So please let us all welcome Dr. Elena Azaola.
Thank you very much. Good evening. It's a pleasure and it's an honor for me to have the opportunity to be here. And I would like to thank Dr. Doreen Montag for this opportunity. As she said, I will have to go with the presentation in order that we have time to see a wonderful documentary. So I was just would like to outline a broad a general perspective of the study we made. Here? Here. Good, okay. It was a study conducted by academics in North American region. As you know this phenomena of commercial sexual exploitation of children is characterized by the situation that the children and women, and I have to apologize, my English is not very well, so I'm sorry, it's not very good, but the children and women that are taken to this industry, which by the way is the third crime by the amount of resources it represents, just after the drugs and the traffic and arms traffic. The third would be the children and women traffic by the amount of money. And we also have to say that 4 million, between 4 and 5 million of women and children are trafficked, and the flow will always go from the poorest countries to the rich ones, and from the rural areas to the cities. And I'm going to talk about this study we made together with Canadian and American academics, trying to understand this movement of the traffic of the children and how they are they are and were exploited as well in their own countries of these three countries. Then you know that there is 4 types of commercial sexual exploitation, which is prostitution, trafficking, pornography, and sex tourism. By the way, the documentary we are going to see is about sex tourism in Mexico, in Acapulco. And well, this group of academics completed the study. And okay, no. The general objectives of the project were to learn about the nature, extension, and causes about the commercial sexual exploitation of children, to understand more completely the mixture of social, political, economic, and cultural factors that intervene in the phenomenon and that drive adults to have sexual relations with children. These are some factors that foment and or permit, and this is broad in the society, and it is very, the situation is very common, not just in Mexico, but in Latin America, and as I said, underdeveloped countries, the situation is very much similar, and it has to do then with weak application of norms, violence, ill treatment, and sexual abuse against children, deterioration of condition and life expectation of wide sectors of the population, etc. You can read those others. And these are other factors that promotes the phenomena, which has to do with the abandonment or expulsion of children from the family. In fact, we have a lot of children living in the streets in these poor countries, but we found that same phenomena even in the United States. There are teenagers that have problems in their family, they are thrown out of their families, and they get to live in the streets. So they a lot of times get involved in this prostitution in order to be able to survive. So many times that's what happened. And those children so many times have abandoned their school, and they are high levels of unemployment or underemployment, and organized network for the recruitment, trafficking, and sexual exploitation of children. But also it has to do with corruption of police. We even found some police that they were involved directly in the exploitation, or that they receive money from the exploiters in order not to proceed. And this is also another factor that promotes the sexual tourism, because they know that these countries have weaker institutions, so those exploiters go to those countries because they know that it is difficult that they are going to be prosecuted, even when we now have, as you know, laws that can prosecute this type of crime, even when you commit it in other countries. In fact, we found different situations in which boys and girls are being exploited. And this varies, this depends on the type of exploitation they are subjected to. It's not the same, the children that are living on the streets and are getting involved in prostitution, as for instance, the pornography industry, in which they can be involved, or the tourists that go with them. It also varies depending on the places where they provide their services, the way in which they are recruited, and the procedures used to retain them. The main categories, even though we have a very large, like 25 different categories of children that are exploited, we find that all of them can be maybe narrowed to three main different situations. The first one would be girls and boys that offer their services on the street, girls and boys who offer their services in places that are known for providing sex services, like hotels, bars, nightclubs, brothels. And in fact, we found that a lot of the exploitation, commercial sexual exploitation of children, is very close to the exploitation of adults, women adults. So it takes place in the same places, but in a more hidden way. So, but the other situation is the one of girls and boys that provide these services in places that have other non-purposes, like snack bars, beer shops, massage parlors, beauty salons, etc. Because, they offer these services to their clients in a, of course, under disclosed way, and like that. So the procedures, in many cases, the girls have been taken under false promises to work as waitresses and are gradually obliged to provide sexual services. And the procedures can go from threats and blows to more subtle but equally effective ways that include seduction, a relationship as a partner of the exploiter who may or may not be identified by the children as their pimps. So this really causes very lot of damage in the lives of the children who has not, of course, the capacity, and they are not mature enough to understand. And later we are going to talk about these damages and that they last for their lives, for their total lives. It's very difficult for them to heal these from these damages. The exploiters' procedures, it's also frequent that exploiters take the children from one town to another or move them from one bar to another in the same town. The exploiters try to separate the children from their families and from other community ties that could offer them support. That's what they move. So they are like 3 weeks in this town and they move to another and move, so that the children do not make acquaintances and people who can probably feel sorry for them and try to help them and all that. There is also, in certain, not in all cases, but in certain cases, we found cases in which children go into the sex trade after having been recruited by some member of the family. Sometimes they are families that they are on that and take their own children to do pornography, for instance, and things like that. In other cases, family can have an attitude of complicity because even when they suspect that the income the child brings is not legal, they prefer to enjoy the money rather to investigate where it comes from. Of course, there are other families that do care about their children, and when the children are captured by these groups or even gangs, we can call them sometimes, they try to recuperate the children, but this is not the case in most cases because these people very well know the children that are much vulnerable because their family cannot take care of them or do not care, or they are alone, or they might treat or abuse the children. So there are many different circumstances so that make the children more vulnerable. And different procedures are used to recruit. On occasion, the exploiters recruit their victims directly, and on others they use intermediaries or procurers. There are places where the children are recruited with greater frequency, such as bus stations, where the procurers locate girls in particular who have come by themselves to the town and have a great need to obtain unemployment. The exploiters know how to approach and submit their victims very well, since they have lived in the milieu for generations and have been able to perfect their procedures. They not always use violence, they more probably seduce and seduce the girls, or sometimes they promise the girls that you have to do this type of filming in order that you will become a big star. So the girl who is 14, 15 years old believes that story and get involved in this situation. They say, well, after that, they will get to know you, they will see how pretty you are, so you are going to be a big star in the film industry. These kind of things that the exploiters know how to do. We also have foreign exploiters, as the documentary will show, that there are also foreign, mainly in Mexico and in Latin America, and most of them are Americans and Canadians, but also people from other countries. And I have heard that Australian people can go, for instance, to Thailand with those purposes of have relationships with children, even though it will be much more, they have more chances to get caught that in these cases that we are going to show in Latin America. And they also have procedures to retain the children. They are constantly watched in order to control all their movements and avoid them getting in touch with their relations or with persons who could persuade them to leave the job. They are induced also, what is terrible, into drug consumption and are told that their supply depends on their stay in the place of work. So they know that, and once they get the addiction, it's much more difficult that they try to escape or ask for help, because they have this addiction and they, need to remain there in order to have the supplies. Also, blows and death threats for them and their relatives are the last resort, and one the children cannot withstand, since they have been able to prove that they are not just empty words. In fact, we made interviews in Mexico with 100 children, so that's why we get to know the different situations. And I remember one time one girl saying, this was working at the street and the exploiters were kind of taking, they watching them. So this girl say, at least when I see my friends that are the other corner, at least I know that they are alive. They can be beaten, they can be whatever, but at least they are alive. So they know that the threats are for real. And the most extreme situation we found in Mexico was at the Mexico southern border, where girls who have been bought and literally bought in Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, are sold to bars that can be found on both sides of the borderline, and they can be sold for $100 or whatever. And the regime of death slavery is used in these bars. That is, the girls are not allowed to leave their place of work until they have covered the whole sum the owner paid. So I had to go, just about the conclusions in order to be able to show the documentary. These conclusions, what it says is about the social situation that has a complicity in what type of communities this thing develops, and they are communities where a high degree of group and local identity predominates, with stable, lasting links of solidarity among its members. So what I mean is that when the social links are weak, they do not have a history and identity, social cohesion, and yes, these human groups that have broken their primary associative links without replacing them with other new ones that fulfill the function of cohesion and mutual recognition, and where normativity remains external to the group, we tend to disseminate with decreases to exhaust. So it has to do at the end, but by what we social scientists call anomy, because it is in fact main factor. So the documentary we are about to see, it was made after we made the study of why we were making the study. This Canadian producer, which is a very, very good producer, become interested because he wanted to sensitize to people of his country about the damages and about the situation of these poor children they were coming to exploit in Acapulco. So that's what we are gonna see now, the situation in Acapulco, just to have the sense that, yeah, they are taking more action as this thing is more disclosed and it's more discussion about it, it's more easy to try to be wise, taking care of children, and to try to do some policies to track down this phenomenon that is going on and on, because the electronic ways to reproduce this material, and the more the people travel, all this situation in the modern life has done. But in fact, this phenomenon had existed since forever. But we can.
Thank you.
It's okay. I'm sorry.
If you ask me to stop here and to open up the discussion.
Well, I don't know if you have any comments or questions. Yes.
Well, it's obvious that the Guerrero government, Mexican government, is doing something, a little but something. What are doing the United States and Canadian government? Because those guys are the sick people, not the children. Then they have to cure their citizens. In that way, they are not going to annoy the young children in Mexico. Do you know if they are doing something or free to go?
Well, it's difficult to say. I think that there are several responsibilities, and yeah, of course, in fact, you can explain how the phenomena keeps going on and on, because doing of the necessities different from both parts obtain, in a way, satisfaction, in a way, of course, in a very perturbing way that damage the children. But you should have think also that, yeah, in fact, how comes they don't have family, parents, at the first place to protect them? Then second, why do not have enough authorities, institutions, society who also protects them? And you know that there is people around with this inclinations in their sexuality, you know, that it is a reality too. So they try to go and to look for the opportunities in which they find easier to satisfy these inclinations. And yeah, it's, you mean, what do they do? Of course, if this happens in their territory, they will be, and they are in fact, much more capable of prosecuting those guys. They do prosecute them much more effectively than we are capable of doing in our countries. As this case shows, all the way in which they are trying to put the case is not very well done. So it also shows the weakness of our justice system, that because the documentary later will show at the end how these same people that were in jail, these American and Canadians that were being prosecuted, at the end they found that the easiest way to go out was to pay the children in order that the children put out the charge, or how would you say? Yeah, that the children say that they are not the ones to blame. And that was the end of it. Most of the guys were able to go out of prison because they find the weakness of our institutions. So you see, it's a very complex issue. It's not just to think about good and bad people, which you could say, well, those are children's, but there are a lot of complicities, a lot of weakness, a lot of incapacities, and yeah, there is also people at that beach that was looking at what was taking place, and people who probably felt that they were looking what was going on but didn't do anything. They felt that they couldn't do anything. And as you said, yes, the authorities try to take actions to protect the children, but at the end they don't do enough, or they do not how to do it in a more efficient way. It's a complex issue, as if you think that there is, as in some other situations, offer and demand that comes together, and it's terrible to say that, but in any place of the world, they have been able to totally track down this crime. Of course, there are much better systems that they take much better care of the children, but it is not the situation in the poor countries, or not that well developed, that unfortunately do not have the capacity or even the view of how to better protect the children about these issues. Yeah.
Are there any programs that tackle, I mean, these policies are only tackle the consequence of what happened? Is there any trying to tackle down the reasons why this is happening? And also, what happened to the victims after the crackdown on the children? I mean, just putting them in a shelter is not going to solve the problem, because by over time they have internalized these values of being part of the elite, also the status that they gain, and also the instant money that they have, and then putting them in a shelter. You know that street children in the shelter, the survival rate for them to be in shelter for quite a long time is really, really low. So is there any supporting programs that support this breakdown as a comprehensive policy?
Yeah, in many countries they are developing each day their programs to really try to understand the situations in which these children are kept, because it is not easy to understand what happens in their minds when they are children and these things are going on. It's not easy. So we don't have all the time people very, very well trained to understand, but in several countries they are having much. And I would like to read, because there were a very good study they made to understand what happened with these children when they are adults. And what happened is that they learn, and try just to put yourself in that situation. The lesson they learn is that the only thing they have valuable of themselves were their sexuality. So these children will always keep, if there is not proper intervention with them, they will always keep having this in their minds, that the only thing valuable about them is their sexuality. So how would they feel? Their beliefs about themselves is, I'm dirty, disgusting, bad, and morally corrupt. I'm to blame for what happened to me. I caused it. So if there is not an effective intervention, they think like this. I must have liked what happened to me. If I liked any part of it, it means I liked it all. Sex is the only thing about me that is valuable. Sex is the only currency. In order to get others to pay attention to me, I have to use sex. I'm so broken, I can't trust my feelings. Others say I like things that I don't think I like. If I can get people to have sex with me or to want to have sex with me, it means I am lovable and worthwhile. Sex is lovability. So you know in which way all his personality grows into a mistaken way. So it takes a lot for professionals very well trained to understand this situation and to know how to help it. And a lot of countries do not have them. Yeah, over there, and then, yeah, you do, yeah, you.
From what I've seen, the problem in Mexico is the same as a lot of other countries in the world.
Yep.
And so what is UNICEF doing about this? United Nations?
Yeah, in fact, I forgot to mention that this study in Mexico was founded by UNICEF, and UNICEF conducted big campaigns in media in order to people be aware of the problem and try to protect the children. That's the most they do, because they don't, unfortunately, give direct attention to the children. Unfortunately, they don't do that, but at least they do make these campaigns and that.
They could be doing a lot more by the sound of things.
Excuse me?
They could be doing a lot more.
I think so too. Yeah, you're right. I agree. You're right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Well, it appears to me that there is no future for those children because the government fails with the, apart from the protection, but the prevention for that to happen is not an easy problem, of course. It is complex. It's not only in Mexico, but I understand Mexico is not a poor country, but
Yeah.
it is a question of social injustice, inequality, the corruption of the government that probably, or they, not probably, it is, has been proved that in many Latin American countries, the governments are part of the exploitation, children exploitation, drug, and that sort of problems. And how I can put it, because it's really confronting. I feel really sad. But the organizations of the universities, professionals, what they are doing to for the government to confront, to protect those children.
I agree totally for what you said, and I think we are having more and more organizations by the civil society that are dedicated to this issue, that are creating shelters, that are also campaigning and all of that. Yeah, still it's not enough. But what I say, we have to also see the positive part. It is an issue that years ago, it was not even, nobody talked about it. So it is positive that we now know more about the phenomenon. But I agree with you, we have to take more action about it. Yeah, no question, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think I would like to first thank Dr. Azaola, and before we thank her together, I think it's go behind the camera. I think the question about what we can do or what we should do and why we aren't doing much more, I think you can actually see tonight here, and the response of the audience, of how many people are really interested in the topic and would like to do something about it. On the other hand, I also think it is on us. It is on us who we are maybe not living in the street or haven't been living in the street. But I think the topic about sexual exploitation is not only one that is affecting children who are in the streets, but also in other spheres of environment, which can be family related, etc. And maybe it is on us. I mean, when Dr. Azaola is saying we don't know enough about it, maybe it is then on us to talk about it and to make it more public, and maybe inform the public about it. But because it is such a taboo topic still in so many areas, and even if you start talking about it, people don't want to hear about it and change the topic or don't come to those events, we can't really create, or it's very difficult to create a critical mass, because the people who come are the ones who are interested and are already doing something about it. So it's a question as much towards, so what do we need to do in order to call or to create an environment in which we can start to talk more openly about it, and where is it, and what would be the factors that would be influencing it. But let's thank Dr. Elena Azaola, and I would very much like to invite you to continue the discussion outside over some beer and some food. Thank you.